Resuming debate, the honourable member for South Okanagan, West Kootenay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm happy to speak today on Bill C-291, a bill that would require the labeling of food products made from genetically modified organisms, or GMOs. And I want to start by acknowledging the work and mentorship of Alex Adamanenko, who served as MP for BC Southern Interior for almost a decade. Mr. Adamanenko introduced bills very similar to this one in the previous parliaments and worked tirelessly in his time as MP for the farmers of Canada and for food security for all of us in this country. He was a very popular MP in the Southern Interior, and he's left big shoes to fill in my riding. And I'm sure he's very happy to know that his work is being carried on by the member from Sherbrooke. And I also tabled a motion on GMO labeling last year in this place, but I'm happy that my colleague has taken forward this issue as a bill. So why do we need GMO labeling in Canada? Well, for one thing, it will bring us into line with regulations used by our major trading partners. The European Union requires GMO foods to be labeled, and the United States just passed legislation last year to do the same. This government and my Conservative colleagues are always promoting the value of harmonization of our regulations with the European Union and the United States, and here's a wonderful opportunity for them to get on board with more of that. And these labeling regulations are in place in Europe and the USA because many people are concerned about GMOs and their effects on the environment, on their health and agricultural practices themselves. And much of the debate I've heard here has been about health, and it's more than that. It's about other concerns that GMOs create when they are used in agriculture. And labeling gives people the ability to make informed choices about the foods they eat and the agricultural practices these products support. And again, the Conservative member who preceded me talked about how people should be given a choice. That's what this bill does, Mr. Speaker. And as the member from Sherbrooke said, this is not an anti-GMO bill. It simply gives the people the right to know what they're eating because many people have valid concerns. There are some ecological concerns about GMOs. Most GMO crops, about 86% of them, are modified to be herbicide resistant. A previous Liberal debater here said that there would be less herbicide used if GMOs weren't around. Well, it's quite the opposite, Mr. Speaker. So these GMO crops, most of them are called Roundup Ready. They can be sprayed with herbicides that kill every plant in the field except the crop itself. And this is a great idea from the farmer's perspective, but it does allow the application of huge amounts of chemicals on farms across Canada. But Roundup and similar herbicides don't just kill weeds. The surfactant that allows the product to bind to the plants is highly toxic. It's deadly to amphibians and fish if it gets into water-filled ditches, ponds, and streams. There are some health concerns about Roundup as well. The World Health Organization recently classed its active ingredient, glyphosate, as probably carcinogenic. Now, Health Canada, of course, has downplayed those concerns because normal diets would only expose Canadians to about 1/3 the daily dose required to cause problems. But, this directly points to the need for GMO labeling. Some people want to be able to make that choice. And there are also deep concerns from the public around the ownership of seeds from plants you have grown. For most GMO products, it is illegal or even impossible to use seeds from the crops you grow to plant next year's crops. And this fundamentally changes the age-old practice of many farmers, particularly those in developing countries, of saving the seeds they produce to grow next year's crops. There are also concerns from some growers in Canada about the risk to our national reputation as a producer of safe, healthy food if we don't tackle the GMO issue. The BC Fruit Growers Association opposed the licensing of the GMO Arctic apple simply because their markets depend on the trust their customers have in the apples that we produce. People buy apples because they're considered a tasty and healthy food, and any risk to that reputation could be bad news for Canadian orchardists. Now, as a scientist, I know that every GMO is different, that the effects they might have on our environment and our health are as different as well. And I don't want to spend all my time today here debating those issues. But I can say that views about GMO effects are very polarized out there. Many people believing that GMOs are all evil, and many believing that they're universally harmless and beneficial. And as in almost every debate, the truth is somewhere in between. But it's hard to get at that truth when much of the data from studies around GMO effects are hidden from public view. One thing I would ask is for the government to adequately support Agriculture's Canada research programs into this field and ensure that Canadians are well informed on the issues. My father worked in agriculture in an Agriculture Canada research station throughout his career, and I'm well aware of the great benefits that the work of our scientists have for the citizens of this country, from help to farmers in producing better crops with higher yields, creating new products, and planning for a future with a changing climate. And I think that Agriculture Canada and Health Canada could play central roles in rebuilding the trust in science behind food safety. Too many Canadians have simply lost all trust in reports they hear about on that subject, when most or all of the studies have been carried out by the large multinational companies that have huge financial stake in the outcomes and interpretation of those studies. So how do Canadians feel about GMO labeling? Well, Health Canada reports that 80% of Canadians want GMO products to be labeled. About the same number of Canadians feel that voluntary labeling doesn't work. The will of Canadians couldn't be clearer. They want GMO labeling. They want this bill to be passed. And this bill bends over backwards to give industry and the government full discretion in how labeling is introduced, what it would look like, and even the actual definition of what is or is not a GMO product. You simply cannot argue that it is too prescriptive or restrictive. This bill is about transparency. GMO labeling is a first step that will help diffuse the polarization in the GMO debate in this country. It will allow Canada to join the rest of the world in giving its citizens a clear choice about what they eat, and as the Prime Minister put it last year, know more about what they are putting in their bodies. So I'd like to finish by thanking the member from Sherbrooke once again for bringing this bill forward, and once again thank Alex Adamanenko for his work in my riding and across Canada. I trust all members will vote for this bill and give Canadians the GMO labeling and the choice they want. Thank you.
Resuming debate.